I'm Anupama Chopra and you're watching Perfect Strokes. Since The Dirty Picture in 2011, women-led narratives have made inroads both critically and commercially in Hindi cinema. But what does it take to tell a story from a woman's point of view? ALANKRITA SHRIVASTAVA, director of Turning 30 and Lipstick Under My Burkha, tells us about the female gaze and why it's important for cinema to be an inclusive space.
I think it's very important to start looking at cinema and trying to identify the gaze with which it's sort of created and also the gaze with which it's being sort of consumed. And I really do feel that popular culture has largely been shaped by the male gaze. And the female gaze has kind of been missing because there have not been enough women behind the camera who are actually telling the stories, writing the films and shooting films and directing films. I do think that, when there is the female gaze at work, in most cases, one will sort of find that there is more empathy, there is a great deal of sensitivity. It's because I think that women experience the world in a different way. And I think who you are sort of shapes how you look at characters, how you're looking at the story. And in fact, as I think like who you are determines how you see the world, and that sort of shapes how you want to tell that particular story. So, your worldview and your point of view. So I think all of that sort of comes into play, and I think it comes into play in very sort of specific ways as well, like how do you use the camera? So are you going to use the camera in a way that is just sort of, sometimes randomly going up and down a woman's body for no reason and sometimes just to titillate. How are you placing your characters in a particular scene? And of course, going back at the level of story and character itself, that what kind of parts are you giving to the female characters? Do they have agency or do they not? Or are they, do they only exist to serve the purpose of men? And often, films made with a female gaze are far more sort of, they're looking at the world through the female point of view. So even the camera is used differently. So you're not feeling like you're looking at the woman, but more like you're with her, which is a sort of a slightly, it's a subtle thing, but if you start looking, it becomes quite clear. And I do feel like a huge problem, with sort of cinema and popular culture has been that we are very used to. So basically, we've become conditioned to look at women through the eyes of a sort of patriarchal man. So sometimes we see them only as, objects of desire. So then you're just, there's a particular way that they're being filmed and shown, maybe just as, trophies for men, or like in India with item songs. Or you have women being like martyrs, like, they are like saintly wives, or they're very virginal, or they are very like vampish. So basically they keep getting put into boxes, but they're basically serving the purpose of what a man feels like the role that women should sort of play, rather than women having agency about what is it that they want, what are their dreams, what are their hopes, and how do they experience the world. So the very same sort of incident from a female point of view may be very, very different. So, a marriage, for instance, with a very seemingly docile, traditional wife, for the husband, it might see, if the film is being made from that point of view, it seems like everything's okay. But from the female point of view, you will feel like maybe she's not happy and she has 2,000 other thoughts which she's not expressing, and she has another life which, he doesn't know anything about. So basically, the female gaze tries to give a glimpse into what it's like to be a woman. So, I have sort of grown up in a way where I went to an all-girls boarding school, and I've always read a lot of books by women, and I've been very, very influenced by a lot of female writers. I come from a family of very strong women. And, then I went to college also, which was like an all-girls college. So I think that I've been very well schooled in feminism. And from a very, very early sort of stage, I think right from the time when I was in school, I was always thinking about the fact that it's an unequal world. And I think I was also trained academically to to keep critically looking at everything around me and sort of not take things just as they are and at face value. And I think everything I read and all of that, it kind of kept like adding to that. So I feel like I have an interest in in really exploring how women see the world and in the interior lives of women. I really feel I'm more interested in that, and I do feel like there are enough stories about men where we're trying to figure out what's going on with them and putting men at the forefront. And I don't think that every female filmmaker should only make films about women, but I think it's very important for every filmmaker to make films that they feel very passionate about and tell stories that they feel very, very connected with. And so I always feel like I should tell the story that I really want to tell. I have something to say when it comes to the sort of complexity and interior world of women. I feel like if I find a story where there is something about masculinity that I want to really examine, I would love to do that. But I do think that I am not interested in constantly perpetuating, in going on telling stories where the center of the universe is a heterosexual man of privilege. I don't feel like I want to add to that, because I feel like even if I'm telling stories about men, I would rather tell stories where you feel like there is some sort of examination of the power dynamics at play. And I'm not interested in helping the privileged become more privileged. I don't know, it's just not my cup of tea. I just feel like, why not tell stories that are not being told, and something that I'm sort of more interested in, which is why for Made in Heaven for me was very, very interesting, because though it's not only like a female protagonist story, but if you look at both the protagonists, one is a female and the other is a gay man, so at least he's not the mainstream in terms of how stories are told. So there was so much to explore. So I think for me it's that, like, I'm more interested in people whose stories are untold. When it comes to writing female characters, I think this goes for men as well as women, because I feel women are also kind of, we've also grown up, with a very patriarchal sort of point of view and society, and we also, by osmosis, there's a lot of misogyny that, that we internalize, and we don't even realize, but it does get reflected in our actions and even in our creative work. So I think, as responsible filmmakers and writers, it is important to examine how we are dealing with characters in a story. And with regards to, like, I think female characters, first of all, I think it's important to just look at, does my female character have any agency or not? Is she only there to fulfill the needs of the male character? Even if your story has a male protagonist, I feel give the female characters, like, flesh them out properly, give them agency, let them have contradictory opinions, let them not just be yes men to the male characters, and let them not have any power over their own lives. And even if they, what they want and what they express doesn't result in like a happy ending like that. But the point is, I think, to show the journey of women actually having opinions, feelings, ambitions, dreams, desires, thoughts, which are entirely their own, and they don't have to come from how the male character is seeing them. If we're looking at female characters, let's also look at how the male characters are talking about the female characters. Are they just talking about their body parts? Or are they just being described, like, why does a male protagonist like a female protagonist? It shouldn't just be, oh, she's very beautiful. There needs to be something about her that makes her more human, rather than just looking at the physicality. So also, are your male characters constantly cracking, sexist jokes? So I think all those things kind of tie up into how you should sort of, look at the balance of, male and female characters. But definitely, I think giving women agency. And again, even if you're having a male protagonist say something very sexist, we have to figure out a way, like, is she going to give it back to him? Or later, does she think about it? Or later, does somebody else comment on it? So it doesn't keep going down as it's okay. Like, even if she's a character who's taking it, there needs to be a comment that it's not okay. That's what what I feel, and yeah, and I definitely feel like it would be great, if we reached a time where every Friday half the films that came out would be films, with female leads, and half would be with male leads, and then we wouldn't need to say that these are female protagonist films, because we never say that this is a male protagonist film. And in fact, now I've started, when people ask me that, oh, so you're making one more female protagonist film, I'm like, why aren't you asking the other male directors, why are you making one more male protagonist film, So I hope like that sort of time comes. As a female filmmaker, I'm often asked this question that, do you feel like there's this burden to write, like good, heroic female characters? And I think definitely I would say that that's not the case at all, in the sense that I do think that there's a perception of a female character being strong only if she's good, or if she does something heroic, or she does the right thing. And I think I'm completely opposed to this idea. I think great female characters should be flawed, they should be grey, and they are just human, just like everybody else. I think it's not about being good or right. I think it's about being able to have female characters that are flesh and blood, that actually, they feel, they think, they laugh, they cry, they do horrible things to people, horrible things are done to them, but it's just like to flesh them out fully. And they should, I feel like the most interesting female characters, in fact the most interesting characters, are always people who are flawed and complex. And I really don't believe in this black and white. For me, I think the world exists in hues of grey, and I think mostly with all my female characters, they're always grey. Yeah, so I do feel that just having very one tone, brave, heroic women, I find that a little boring, especially if they're supposed to be all virtuous and good, because it's pretty much like you're just looking at them as goddesses and not as real people. And I think the battle is always that there's very little representation of real women on screen. It's just the same thing. It's like you have this girl who's a virgin and everybody is in love with her and she's so beautiful, or this woman is like a mother who's sacrificing everything, or then like this very brave warrior, heroic kind of person. So again, in the middle of all this, the real woman is lost and the real woman is flawed. So I think I love flawed female characters, and I love flawed characters in general, and I hope that writing in India evolves to give space to many more human and flawed characters. I think it's 2019 and it's really time to challenge the notions of beauty, because I think we've been fed this whole idea of what beauty is. So, like flawless skin and a perfect figure and like hair blowing in the wind, and and like in the West, it was like, the whole thing about racism, that beauty was always sort of identified as being, and as people being white. So I think that, and of course, even in India, there's been this obsession with fair skin and all of that. So I think, as artists, as creative professionals, I think it's my duty to not try to buy into these ideas of beauty, because I think beauty doesn't have any one particular form. And I always do the reverse. When I'm shooting, actually try to use lenses that don't beautify my characters. I don't like shooting with like a tele lens, which unnecessarily romanticizes the face and makes everything in the background blurred and all of that. I try to use wider lenses up close, where you can see the person as they really are. So I actually really am very somebody who's not, I'm really not into buying these kind of ideas of beauty. And of course, there's a basic aesthetic that you want to, but I feel beauty. So there can be a lot of beauty in a sense of jaggedness as well. And I feel like there's a lot of beauty in imperfection. And in fact, I don't find there to be so much beauty in perfection. So I feel it's important that if these things are important, so in your own way, one has, like in our own ways, we all have to keep sort of questioning and redefining. And I do feel that, the more we keep redefining ideas of how women should be portrayed, and the more people will get sort of used to watching women like that and not expect women to constantly be portrayed in that manner. So I feel like I don't really care about, bulges and this and because I feel like it adds realness and realism to the frame. And of course, I feel it's like a big battle because then it's a much larger battle. It is not restricted just to cinema. It really exists in every form of representation. But I feel like we all need to sort of do our bits and not keep perpetuating that same sort of of idea. And I feel like the moment we are clear that beauty can be so many different things, it's our own inner eye that needs to sort of see something as beautiful. I feel it gets translated like that on screen. So I think if we sort of start changing how we think, then we are able to change how we create. And that leads eventually to a process where people start viewing things also differently. So I feel like we just have to to be the change. And I really do feel that there's it's the moment you start thinking of beauty as something that is so much more so much larger, so much more expansive, so much more diverse, so much more plural, then the smallest things, it's that gentleness and empathy with which you sort of, create a moment in cinema. A lot of things become very beautiful, which to a conventional eye and maybe in a very commercial kind of, older kind of old school way will be like, this is not beautiful. But beautiful is what you think is beautiful and, how you can convey. And I think as a filmmaker, it's your own conviction. To all the women filmmakers who are starting out and writing their stories, making their films, trying and getting rejected and trying again, and succeeding a little, sometimes not, I think it's important to just hang in there and persevere, because I think that filmmaking requires a lot of emotional strength, because I think everybody's talented. If you tap into the stories you want to tell, you'll find what you want to say and figure out a way to create that story. But I think what's really important is to not give up halfway. And I think that the world often gives you signals that make you feel like you're not good enough, you're not worthy, your work is not important, what you want to say is not important, your film is not good enough, whatever, your script is not good, or whatever. But I think that it's important to tune out of all of that and just continue without getting defeated. I think that really is the most important thing, because mostly what happens is that people give up halfway. So I would say that just keep at it, and if you keep at it, I feel like something will work out. But I really feel the difference is not about talent. The difference is only about who are the people who have it in them to just doggedly, undefeated, however terrible they're feeling, they just get up the next morning and they're like, I'm still going to do it. I'm not going to listen to, all the naysayers. I really think the difference between people who make it and the people who don't is really this ability. So I would say that hone this ability, figure out how to stay emotionally strong, through all the sort of lows when you feel like maybe you should give up and you should do something else or it's not going to happen. If you can just stick out the bad times, the good times are sure to come.